Is your spouse a narcissist or just an asshole? Here's the thing. I've been doing this for 15 years, and in that time, I've actually had one person be diagnosed as a narcissist by a medical professional. That is a very small percentage of the cases that I've had. I did some research on Google. I'm not a doctor. And Google said that between 0.5 and 5% of the population is diagnosed as a narcissist. That typically takes place as a dual diagnosis with another disorder, such as borderline personality disorder or schizophrenia. There are multiple other disorders. I'm not trying to say that I've listed everything, certainly, but I did get a printout from Google and I wanted to talk through some of the qualities of a narcissist and then show how it actually can be just the other person is a complete jerk, right? So the first one is grandiosity. Everyone is going to bolster their claim. If I had a penny for every time the other parent said, if you take me to court, I'm going to say blah, 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 and then you're never going to see the kids again. Okay? That's someone just being a jerk, probably, not necessarily a narcissist. The next one is entitlement. Gosh, how many people, the spouse that's worked usually, right? And if there's a stay-at-home parent, that person who's worked feels like they are so entitled to all of their quote retirement accounts and all the benefits that they have gotten for the family. Well, it turns out it takes two to be in a marriage. So if you're getting a divorce, even if you were a stay-at-home mom, Arizona is a community property state. So I don't care what they think they're entitled to, you're going to get your portion. The point of this video is to make sure that you get really good legal advice, because whether someone's a narcissist or they're just a jerk and they're trying to scare you and sway you in your negotiations, you need to make sure that you hold your ground and that you get really good legal advice. The next one is exploitation. So unfortunately, I see this all the time in my cases, whether someone's a narcissist or not. There is financial exploitation most of the time, right? Where someone controls all of the money, one person doesn't have access to the bank accounts, they might not even be on the bank accounts, even if they're married and it's technically community property, but because the accounts don't have that person's name on it, it's very difficult for them to go down to the bank and get the information. So there's a lot of financial exploitation, but it doesn't mean that your partner is a narcissist. Lack of accountability. Oh my, right? This goes on both sides of the fence, right? Lots of people don't want to take accountability for their mistakes. If they're late for the pickup, if they don't have the money to pay the child support or to pay the debts or to pay the mortgage payment, right? They're going to say it's someone else's fault, or it was the weather, or the dog ate my homework. You know, all of those classic cliche excuses. But just because they don't want to be accountable for their mistakes does not mean that they're a narcissist. Another one is arrogance. Gosh, dealing with people who are so arrogant on the other side does make a case more difficult, right? It means that you very frequently have to take a step back, take a deep breath, and think before you speak, because you don't want to engage with these types of people, right? The best tip that I have for many of these behaviors is don't engage with them. Right? You are not required by the court to enter into a lengthy discussion about every single issue that might come up regarding your divorce or child custody case. That is not required. In fact, I think the court would probably be happy to see people do a lot less bickering back and forth. So my best advice is you don't have to engage. My second tip to combat the types of behaviors that a narcissist or an asshole exhibit are put it in writing. You don't have to have a meeting with someone. You don't have to speak with them on the phone. You don't have to let them ambush you at an exchange in front of your children because they just want to talk. You can say, send me an email, please. Send me a text message, please. And if it's in writing, then there's a full record of everything that you talked about, where if you're just in a conversation with someone and they're being a jerk, unless you were smart enough and you know, in the moment, it's so hard to press record on your cell phone and keep it in your pocket and make sure it's recording the whole time. Because yes, in Arizona, it is legal to record someone as long as one person of the conversation knows that it's being recorded to avoid illegal wiretaps, right? So, but it's so difficult to remember to do that. And sometimes the court is worried about, were you trying to set them up with this recording? So if you just keep all of your communication in writing, there's a full record of everything and no one is surprised later. The last thing that I want to talk about on this list is a lack of empathy. So that is a huge problem in these types of cases, right? You might be very angry at your spouse and your spouse is very angry at you. And even if you weren't married and you have kiddos together and this is a custody case, it doesn't matter. I have seen such a reduction in the lack of empathy. So there are things that are going to happen and it could be to you or it could be to the other side. And when that does happen, you want to remember before you make your official stance in this case or to the other parent, what if it were you in those shoes, right? What if it were your grandmother that passed away and you wanted to take the kids over the weekend? And I know that you might have had a really fun play date that you've been planning for a really long time with someone, and that's going to be canceled and they're going to go and spend more time with the other parent. That unfortunately is probably going to happen to you. It's part of the human condition. I don't want anyone to pass away, but it's just part of the life cycle. And so it could be a death. It could be a celebration. It could be a celebration for someone's 100th birthday party, right? There are going to be things that you're going to want to do. And so if you say no, it's going to make the other person remember, hey, they didn't have empathy for me in this situation. They said no. So when they ask me next time, I'm going to say no. And it's just an olive branch. I know it could be that they say no next time as well, right? But if you take this issue to court, you can show, because if you follow my last tip, you put this all in writing where you can show that you were the person that stepped up, gave empathy, and were able to reach a resolution that were in the best interest of your children in that example. If you need help guiding yourself through a custody case or a divorce case when the other person is diagnosed as a narcissist or they're just being a complete asshole, give us a call. We're going to give you the honest answers the same as if you were a friend of ours coming into the office. We just want to make sure that you get the best advice possible so that you and your family can have a bright future.